Next up, we have Matt Gill. He's the Managing Director and CEO of White Rock Minerals. The ASX code for White Rock Minerals is WRM, and they're also on the OTCQX, and the code for that is WRM, C for Charlie, F for Freddie. Now, these guys are a near-term gold producer. They have assets not only here in Australia, but also in Alaska. What are we going to start with, Matt? Should we start with Alaska?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry, for the intro. Look, I think the current interest in White Rock is definitely in Alaska, and our recent capital raising and field program was in Alaska. So that's the current story, not to forget our other asset in New South Wales, but we can come back to that a bit later.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about Alaska and what it is that you've got, because you're quite excited about this this asset, aren't you? And you've done some drilling and you've had some results out. So if you could just start by giving some, because there's a lot of people on this conference, some of whom won't know who White Rock is. So let's just start with a brief overview.
Okay, so White Rock, yeah, as you said, ASX listed. We recently got a cross listing on the New York OTC, and that was to help the US investor invest into White Rock shares. We have two assets, the Mt Carrington gold and silver project in northern New South Wales, and also this Alaskan asset. The Alaskan asset has been the focus of our on-ground activities actually over the last 3 seasons. We've now just completed our 3rd season on the ground there. In some ways, we're pretty proud of having been there before Northern Star got there, but there have been other companies, you know, working in Alaska, juniors like us. We've got a fantastic ground position, about 800 square kilometres. We're only 100 kilometres due south of Fairbanks, so we are close to major infrastructure. And what I really like, and I'm a mining engineer, but the geology in Alaska is fantastic. It's, you know, Alaska's in the top 5 of the Fraser Institute. For jurisdictions. WA is the #1. So Alaska is not far behind, and we've had great, great experiences there. What we like about our project is it's 2 prongs. It's got a silver-rich zinc VMS polymetallic, which we have a Jorc resource on already. But we've also got, and we announced it earlier this year, and it was our focus this year, a large gold anomaly called Last Chance. So we've got this wonderful, you know, 2 projects or two target areas in the same land package.
Matt, when you first, I'd be curious to hear, how did you come across this particular land package, #1, and #2, were you expecting to find, because from our talking beforehand, this is quite a large gold anomaly, and one that you are saying potentially could be a little bit of a game changer for the company. I'd love you just to expand a bit on that.
Yes, no, that's good. I mean, we were capital raising, or I was capital raising for Mt Carrington, our project in New South Wales, about 4 years ago. And one of the groups that had helped myself previously in other roles, and also White Rock, said that they weren't able to help with the capital raise, but would we be interested in an asset in Alaska? So we actually weren't looking at the time. A lot of people have heard me say, but I've learned in my career never to say no to something I don't know what I'm saying no to. I also remember telling the chap, I've already got 1 mouth to feed. I don't know that we can afford a second one. Anyway, we had a look at it. It had been in private hands for over 15 years. It already had 127 drill hole database. So it had low-hanging fruit, no modern exploration, came with news flow, came with another dimension for White Rock, not just at Mt Carrington story, and it also came with some funding. So roll the clock forward.
Well, when you say it came with some funding, what do you mean by that?
Well, we were able to raise some money as part of the acquisition of that, and allow us to progress that asset. So roll the clock forward 4 years. We've now had 3 seasons on the ground. We've now done about 10,000 metres of drilling ourselves. That original 15 square kilometres is now 800 square kilometres. We released a maiden Jorc resource on the VMS, which is 9 million tonnes grading a bit under 6% zinc, and 5 ounces a tonne silver and a gram a tonne gold. So a fantastic head start there. Now, so it sits in this volcanogenic massive sulfide zone, but it also sits in what's called the Tintina Gold Belt, where the likes of Pogo, so Northern Star's Pogo, in the same belt as Fort Knox, the Kinross run that most people will have heard of. And it's also in the same belt that the Donlin project, which is JV, Barrick and Nova Gold, which is 45 million ounces, sits in. So, as I said, we've got this great VMS coincident with intrusive related gold system, gold anomaly. So while we were doing our assaying and mapping for VMS, we also knew to make sure we assayed for gold. And earlier this year in January, we announced, if you like, a discovery of this 15 square kilometre gold anomaly, which was of the same tenor that Pogo gold mine was discovered on. And
did that surprise you, Matt? Did that surprise you that you came across that? Because that is a discovery and it's quite significant. And by the way, there are people listening today that are not geologists and that are just coming in to understand gold and gold equities. If you could just explain a little bit to those that don't know what this means to somebody like you to come across this sort of a discovery.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we were doing, late last year, we did a lot of stream sediment soil sampling. So taking samples in the stream beds and bagging them up and sending them off for assays. And we got those results back earlier this year, which showed this large continuous 15 square kilometre of anomalous gold in the surface soil. That told us that, you know, the gold had to have come from somewhere. It was such a tenor that, for instance, Dr. Quentin Henry, who we had pitched the story to, loved it so much, was so impressed with it, that he helped introduce White Rock to the North American market, and he is actually formally our technical advisor. He has said he has not seen anything quite like this over that sort of size. And so
just before you go on, again, for those that don't know who Quentin Henry is, this guy is a legend in the North American markets. He's also spent some time in Australia, but just a little bit of background on Quentin, if you could.
So Quentin's based out of Denver. He's an economic geologist. He was the founder, and I think he's still chairman of Novo Resources, which has got the gold exploration play in the Pilbara in Australia. So he founded that. He's on the board of a number of companies. He co-invested with Eric Sprott into Kalamazoo, so the gold play here in Victoria. You know, Quentin has a lot of interests across the industry, both at a technical level, and he's a great support for us, but also in the financial markets. I don't have long enough to go through his CV, but people are aware of him. He's certainly in North America.
And I think the people in North America know that Quentin Henry doesn't just put his name behind just anything. So what he's seeing with your Alaska project is that this is a discovery of certain significance. Would that be right?
Yes, he was very, very impressed with the grades. They're low grades, but in soil anomaly, the size and the robustness, you know, got him very excited. He don't see that every day, and as I said, he hasn't seen those sort of soil sample assay numbers in his career over such a large area, to the degree that he gave a lot of the raw data to the Sumitomo geologist that discovered Pogo originally, and got similar feedback. So, you know, to the listener of this conference, Kerry, I would say, okay, I obviously have an opinion and a view, and I'm a bit biased, but there are two, you know, expert geologists that have independently also, you know, pretty much endorsed what we're seeing, and that's what gives us the excitement. Now, it is extremely early days. We went from announcing it in January to drilling it in July, and we stopped drilling only recently. So, you know, our first season, lots of information being gleaned. We've still got information coming in, and that sets us up really, really well for next year.
Okay, so you've got a lot of information coming in. So as we speak, it's the end of November. Obviously, not a lot. I guess it's pretty cold up there now. You've done a lot of drilling. So I guess now is the time when you are going to interpret that information and then get ready for the next drill season. What I'd love to hear is, what are the next steps? What can investors hope to hear from you in the near future and the longer term?
Yes, so we, through almost all the geological tools available to us in such a short period of time, so we tasked a satellite to do spectral satellite photography. We flew a helicopter that did airborne magnetics over the ground. We did some on-ground geophysics. We did a lot of geochemical assaying and sampling, and we also did some drilling. So the news flow to come will be the results of that airborne magnetics and how that helps complement the picture that we're building. We've got a lot of soils and rock chip sampling still to come through. And that again, that's how we actually discovered Last Chance to start with. So we've got that to come. We've got some pretty interesting VMS assays that we also have stumbled across. And we've probably got 2 batches of drilling results still to come. One in the next week or so, and then the last lot probably by mid-December. Now, we're not expecting from all of the geology that we've seen to date that they will be knockout grades. What we believe we are is at the top of a high-grade gold system, and I can direct the listener, to our website and our presentation. There's a slide that tries to show where we think we are. And so we plan to compile all of this information. There are layers of information, analyse that so that when we hit the ground running next year, we're targeted, focused, disciplined, and probably drilling deeper than we've drilled to date, because we think we're just at the very top of a high-grade system. That's our thinking at this stage.
Okay, so at the top of a very high-grade system, are you funded enough to get on with what needs to be done? And what's your time frame, do you think? And I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but is this a long-term plan, or do you think you're going to hit this high-grade system next year?
Well, we'd love to hit the high-grade system next year.
For you shareholders pushing it.
Well, I mean, that's what we're there for. It will be our second season. The listener, this area has never been under tenement claim before, so it never had the work that it's having now. So it's a pure greenfield discovery, and so expectations are high, but it was just our first year. And when I say year, it was our first 2 months.
Yeah.
From discovery, fundraising, and working. So we plan to be back next year. We've got over $10 million in the bank as we speak. So that's a really, really good position for a junior to be in. So depending on how many drills we want to run next year, and it may well be that we use more than one drill, to hit the ground running. But we're certainly funded to be back on the ground next year and drilling at least with 1 rig. What we want to do is work out, have we got enough targets? And we have. We only drilled a handful of probably 6 to 8 targets in this large zone. We need to work out, where do we want to drill? Do we want to go back and drill deeper from this year? Or do we want to also test some of the newer prospects? So, we've got a really nice discussion to have, knowing that we're funded in this really highly prospective area. Where do we want to put the drill or drills?
Matt, you've been in this industry for quite some time. I sense, and I've known you for quite some time, I sense a bit of underlying excitement on this prospect over in Alaska. Again, not putting words in your mouth, and we don't know, because this is mining. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't, that you're new to all of this, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes planning, it takes care, it takes drilling. But for you, Matt, is this something that you are looking at to say, thank goodness I said yes?
Yeah, look, I think so, Kerry. I'm a mining engineer. I like to think I try and keep our exploration geologists a little bit more grounded. But Rowan Warland, our exploration manager, who's worked for Newmont and Normandy, both in Nevada, South America, New Zealand, Australia, this is the best gold anomaly package that he has come across in his career. Wow. Now that's his comment, and I take a big lead from that. it was Quentin Hennigh's, huge endorsement of what we were seeing. He could also see, to the point that he's not only put his name behind this, but also put us in front of his own investment network. And so, exploration is no guarantee, exactly to your point, but this gold has to have come from somewhere, and it sits in this Tintina gold belt that hosts over 200 million ounces of gold. So, with some exploration success, this could easily be White Rock's game changer.
That is exciting indeed. Now, listen, it would be remiss of me to finish this off without talking about Mt Carrington, because, of course, that's where White Rock began. And then, of course, the head was turned because the lady in gold came along. What's happening with Mt Carrington? Should just give us a brief update on Mt Carrington.
Yeah, so again, Kerry, to your point, if there are listeners that aren't aware, so Mt Carrington is an advanced gold and silver project. It's in northern New South Wales between Tenterfield and Casino, so a nice part of the world. It's had past mining, so it's on mining lease. You literally walk onto ore. The pits are pre-stripped. There's a Jorc resource for the gold. There's a Jorc resource for the silver. There's a Jorc reserve for 2 of the gold deposits. There's a feasibility study behind it. To give you a sense for the listener, once in production, at $2,300 an ounce Australian, so under spot price, it would spit out $30 million per annum of free cash.
That's pretty good, isn't it, Matt?
Paying back its capital in just 14 months. Yes, it is. There aren't many projects. Now it's small. It's 35,000 ounces per annum. But as a mining engineer, I prefer quality over quantity. And small is good because you don't have the big environmental footprint, water management, dust, noise, and the capital. And so if you get a payback, around a year, that's spitting out that sort of cash, it's a fantastic cash generator to allow White Rock, to do other things like fund its Alaskan project.
So how are you going to get Mt Carrington underway then? What's the plan?
Yeah, that's the right question. Its next step is approvals. So we've got to finish our environmental studies, and we're well advanced on that. We wrap that into the environmental impact statement. We lodge that with the government. We go through community consultation process, and hopefully we get development consent, so approval to build in 12 to 18 months. So that's the plan, and then it's a year to build it. White Rock has been looking for a partner to help us advance that. That is true to say, and we are open. We did recently sign a non-binding, non-exclusive term sheet with a private company to look to advance Mt Carrington with us. So that's the plan, is go through the approvals, get that approved. Given it's had past mining, there's a tails dam there, etc. It's on forestry land. We think it's well advanced. A lot of the risks are out of it. It's not pristine wilderness that's never had mining. And so, with a fair breeze in our sails, we could be pouring gold within 3 years.
Pouring gold within 3 years. Matt, you've got 30 seconds to tell investors why should they invest in White Rock right now. Mind you, I think it sounds pretty exciting times.
So if the investor looks at our 2 projects, we've got great exposure to gold between the 2. Over 600,000 ounces of gold. We've got great exposure to silver, over 70 million ounces of silver. We've got a really good base metal in zinc. We're in 2 first world jurisdictions, and I think that's important from a sovereign risk point of view. We're well funded with over $10 million in the bank, and a board that is very mindful of looking after and managing shareholders' money and adding value, and that's the plan.
One thing I know about you, Matt, you always do care about shareholders and adding value. Thanks very much for joining us on the Virtual Gold Conference today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kerry, for the opportunity.